In the book of Proverbs, Solomon is drawing for us a picture of a young, naive young man who lacks sense, doesn't know what he's getting himself into, but setting himself up for a great fall into the sin of immorality. He's run into a woman who is willing to entice him and seduce him and take him along this road to destruction. And Solomon is warning this young man and talking about this young man, probably because he is a father of a young son. We don't know of any other children for sure that Solomon had, but we know of the one son who would replace him on the throne. And so most likely he's addressing his warnings to Rehoboam, his son. And as he does that, he has laid all this out, but now he moves forward with talking about how this works out. We're in chapter 5 today, looking at verses 3 and 4. And he wants to kind of flesh all this out a little bit more and give some of the warnings to his son of how this all kind of works out. And so in verses 3 and 4, he talks about his young son, or young man, being set up. He says, "For the lips of an adulteress drip honey." So it's very enticing. What this woman has to say and how she entices this young man is very appetizing. I mean, honey is sweet. And what she says and what she offers seems to be the most wonderful, enjoyable thing imaginable. And smoother than oil is her speech. So she's well versed in what to say. She knows exactly what to say to catch his attention, to draw him to herself, to minimize any potential damage or danger that he might face. And so he is very good at pointing out what this woman is doing and how she's going about doing it. And we find also that she promises what she cannot deliver in verse 4. But in the end, she's bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Look at the contrast. She's promising something sweet, something enjoyable, something wonderful. She's going to give him just a great time, a great experience. He's going to really like what he gets involved with. But the reality is just the opposite. It says here that in the end, she's bitter as wormwood. Now, wormwood was basically a picture of something extremely bitter. And so what seems to be sweet in reality and in the long run is very, very bitter. And so he wants his son to see that, and sharp as a two-edged sword. So a two-edged sword cuts both ways. So no matter what she says and does, in the end, he's going to get cut. He's going to get hurt. He's going to be damaged. So he's warning, no matter what she says, no matter how well she says it, what she's inviting him to enjoy, he will not ultimately enjoy it. This is a picture of sin in general. Immorality in particular here, but sin in general promises what it cannot deliver. It promises happiness and brings sorrow. It promises thrills and brings destruction. It promises success and ultimately leads to ultimate failure. Sin cannot deliver what it promises on, but it promises very well. And immorality perhaps is one of the most enticing of all sins once people get caught up in it, because it seems for a time to offer the very things that somebody thinks they want, without realizing the dangers that are in front of them and without realizing the ultimate payload. And so this is a wonderful picture of that. In verses 5 and 6, he also says that her feet are unstable. He says her feet go down to death and her steps take hold of Sheol. Sheol is a word for the grave. And so where does her ultimate direction lead this young man? Not to some form of heaven, not to the great promises that she has given, but to death and Sheol. And he's using this probably metaphorically. He may not physically die as a result of what happens here, but his life is being destroyed. He's headed towards a grave in which there is this destruction, this ruin of a life. And that's the direction of immorality. The direction of immorality is never towards the good. It's always towards the evil and the bad and the destruction and the ruin. And he says that very graphically in that verse. Verse 6, she does not ponder the path of life, and her ways are unstable, and she does not know it. Here we get just a little sympathy for the lady. Yes, she is drawing away this young man, and yes, she is doing a great deal of harm to his life. So much so that it's being depicted as death or the grave. And so she may very well ruin this young man, at least for a time, perhaps for the rest of his life, who knows. But we do pick up a little sympathy for her as well. She is not without concern for her life. When it says here she does not ponder the path of life, she has not truly considered the direction she's going. She too is naive and simple. She too does not know the ends thereof of the way that she's going with this young man and his life. And it also says her ways are unstable and she doesn't know it. So while she thinks she's on the right path and is headed in the right direction, she is not. And she's headed down an equally ugly, ruinous path as this poor young man is. And she doesn't know it. Just like the young man, the naive young man, who does not realize what he's into and what the results will be, she too does not realize what she's doing to herself and what she's doing to this young man. She is in the process of perhaps ruining two lives, two souls. And on top of that, they both come from backgrounds. She has a family, perhaps a husband and children, and they could be very much devastated when this all comes about. And then him, he has a family that loves him. Perhaps the picture seems to be of a single man, but nevertheless, he has relationships. He has a mother and a father and brothers and sisters, and many that love him. And so two lives here are going to be ruined, plus extended lives as well. And she doesn't know it, and he doesn't know it. And they're simply following a direction that will lead them to ruin. It's a tragic picture, isn't it? And God doesn't pull any punches here. He speaks through Solomon to warn us of the dangers and the ugliness of immorality. I hope you and I pay careful attention to how the Lord guards us and warns us in this passage of Scripture. We'll look at some consequences of immorality tomorrow.